Criss by Lynn Ray Perkins. Chapter 38, Lightning Bugs. Final chapter. Other people on the roof were having conversations too. It was the lightning bugs flickering all over the backyards that eventually drew them all back down the ladder. Someone went inside for a mason jar. Someone put a little grass in it. Someone went into a garage to tap air holes into the cap. And they moved around through the darkness in slow motion, watching, advancing, waiting, grabbing. Debbie was holding the jar. She lifted the cap as the capturers delivered their prey. Between deliveries, she watched the bugs crawl and flutter around inside the jar, searching for the exit. It seemed cruel to keep them in there when it was so obvious that they wanted to get out. But she told herself that once they were free, their small, basic brains would probably have no memory of being imprisoned, of their time in the jar. She hoped this was true. In the meantime, she might as well look closely at their red and black wings, lit up by their fellow lightning bugs, and watch their glow parts go on and off. "What makes them light up?" she asked Lenny as he brought another victim, temporary small brain, to the jar. She had the feeling she'd probably asked him before, but she forgot the answer. "It's a chemical reaction," he said, "in their abdomens." "Why do they do it?" she asked. "It's how the males find the females," said Lenny. "There are different kinds in different parts of the world. There's one in South America that has red and green lights on the same bug. It's called a railway beetle because it looks like a train signal." Encyclopedia information. He still remembered a lot of it. They were both looking into the jar. Then Lenny looked at Debbie's face, intent and subbery, in the warbbery light, and he thought of a question he could ask her. "Want to go to the movies?" he asked. No one had ever asked Debbie this question before. She had imagined often being asked this question, but not by Lenny. He was the wrong person. Wasn't he? She'd never felt that way about him. Had she? His question caught her off guard, and she didn't know what to do with it. The part of her that was open to the universe was facing in another direction just then. She felt disoriented and uncomfortable, and there was Lenny, waiting for her to say something back. "I think it's better if we're just friends," she said. To her relief, Patty arrived with a lightning bug. As she flicked it into the jar, Lenny said to her, "Do you want to go to a movie?" "Okay," she said. "What movie?" Debbie wasn't sure what had just happened. She didn't know if she had gotten out of an awkward situation or invented one, or missed an opportunity. She felt an impulse to say, "Can I go too?" Instead, she handed Patty the jar and said, "Can you hold this for a while? I'm going to go catch some." But when she'd walked away into the darkness, she just stood there. Hector was lying on his back in the grass, looking up at the stars and playing his guitar. The sarong was bunched under his head for a pillow, and it was relying on the sound of his guitar and, near his head, a citronella candle he had borrowed from a local picnic table to keep from being stepped on. He was thinking that maybe love was like starting a fire with 2 sticks. You've always heard that it's possible, but how likely is it? Debbie came over and sat cross-legged on the grass nearby. She crossed her arms, too, at the wrist, her hands resting side by side on her ankle. She was thinking that happiness wasn't necessarily, as Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz says, in your own backyard, but it might be nearby, in someone else's backyard. She was thinking that the grass really could be greener on the other side of the fence. It depended on who was standing in the grass. Maybe you had to go take a look. Maybe she was the kind of person who would have to go somewhere else, and she wondered how far away somewhere else would have to be. Her eyes were open, but it was dark, except for lightning bugs and stars and Hector's candle. She listened to the guitar, which sounded perfect in the midsummer night air. Hector was doing pretty well for not being able to see and lying on his back. He was making up a song that didn't have anything to do with his life so far. That's what he liked about it. He didn't know where it had come from or what kind of song it was. He was just messing around. As usual, it wasn't a complete song. It was just the refrain, and it had a rhythm. It didn't quite have verses or a melody, although it was trying to. To compensate for that, Hector sang it in a soft, twangy drone, that was kind of a walk-through, a talk-through, as if he were really serious about singing it, there would be a melody there. It's a long, long road, I'm going home. I'm going by myself, I'm going on my own. I can't sail, never leave there. I can't sail, never roam. 'Cause my heart don't grow in soil, not the deepest, darkest loam. Just that berm on the side of the road. After listening for a few minutes, Debbie hummed along, then sang it with him as she picked up the words. She sang a harmony, which is interesting, seeing as how there wasn't even a melody yet. She listened as Hector fooled around with the chords, looking for a verse. Then she said, "Wait, I have one." Hector listened while she sang. Going somewhere, having gone, I see I still must travel on. I come and go, I go and come, and will for all my journey on. That long, long road I'm going home. This was the refrain again, and Hector came back in. The melody was clearer now. Their voices rose and fell, separated and came back together, like two birds flying just for fun. That's what they were doing, more or less. At some point, Hector had shifted up to a sitting position, and now he remembered the necklace. He stopped playing abruptly and fished around in his pocket. "I almost forgot," he said. "I have a gift for you." "A gift?" said Debbie. "What for?" He drew the necklace out and held it suspended in the light of the citronella candle. Debbie let out a noise of surprise. "I had it made especially for you," said Hector. "I had cars drive over it." "That's my necklace," said Debbie. "Where did you find it?" She took the necklace and looked at the battered letters of her name. Ouch. The tiny red gem that had dotted the I was gone. The catch was completely busted. "I'm glad it's not a voodoo necklace, or I would be in really bad shape," she said. "I think you should wear it," said Hector. "It's like one of those dogs that travels 1,000 miles to get back to its owner." "I can't," said Debbie. "The little thing is broken." "I'll tie it in a knot," said Hector. "Lean over." Debbie wondered briefly how she would get it off later, but she leaned over and let Hector tie a knot in the gold chain. As she leaned over, she pulled her hair away from her neck and let it hang down in a waterfall, a temporary cave, around her face. She could feel Hector's fingers fumbling with a flimsy chain at the back of her neck. Hector, suddenly aware of Debbie's hair and her neck in this unaccustomed arrangement and closeness, became clumsy. It took him forever to tie the knot. Finally he did it, and she raised her head and her hair went back down in the usual way, but floofed up and disheveled from having been upside down. Her loose hair, her summariness, the existence of the back of her neck, and something she was in the process of learning made her look different than she had a few months ago. She sensed that she herself had something to do with the good and different and important thing that had happened to her, but she didn't know how she had done it or how to do it again. How much of it was luck? Thinking about this had changed the expression in her eyes. As for Hector, he had spent a lot of time walking lately. He'd walked out of his roly-poly childhood, out of his cocoon, and he'd spent a lot of time playing his guitar. It was a leaner, more thoughtful Hector who sat there in the cooling grass. He looked different, too. There they were, both of them waking up on a midsummer night. There was even good lighting, the citronella candle. Something should have happened. Maybe their eyes should have met, and they should have seen each other, really seen each other, after singing together like flying birds and tying on necklaces and all that. Hector did look at Debbie, and he saw her, really saw her for a moment. Debbie looked at Hector, and she saw him, really saw him for a moment. If it had been the same moment, something might have happened. But their moments were separated by about a second. Maybe only half a second. Their paths crossed, but they missed each other. The hard-working necklace couldn't believe it. It let out an inaudible, exasperated gasp. Maybe it was another time that their moments would meet. Maybe it would happen in a few days, or next week. Maybe it would happen when they were 50. But just now they had missed, and the jet trails of the crisscrossing moments left an awkward vacuum in their wake. They both felt it, though they didn't know what it was, and when they tried to guess, they both got it wrong. To fill it up, Debbie said, "Can you play another song?" Hector pulled his guitar back onto his lap and started to play. He played Greensleeves because it was easy and sad and so beautiful. Alas, my love, you do me wrong. The song was so old, but it was such a new, real feeling. They sang it together, but their thoughts went off to different places, to different people. Maybe the wrong places, the wrong people. How did anyone know? Mistakes would have to be made. Maybe a lot of mistakes. It was okay. They can't hear me, but I want to tell them that it's okay. They're doing just fine. Phil came over and sat down. Then Tessie, Roanne, Lenny, Patty, Chrisanne, Phil's brother Rick, and his sister Mary Angela. Were the Ciccolinis still there? The Dureskis? It's hard to remember. It was dark, but it seems as if they might have been. It felt like there were a lot of personalities sitting there in the grass. Separate in their thoughts, but together, too. Someone opened the jar. The lightning bugs knew what to do. They flew out into the night air, every last one, blinking. Here I am. End of Criss Cross by Lynn J. Perkins.